I was a student from probably 1975 to 1983. I then started college in 83 and started working as a sub probably in 84 to about 87, 88, and then went back in the district much later. Well, based upon a lawsuit that was filed much earlier than when I was in school, they ultimately decided, and I'm not sure, I believe I was actually graduated from high school when the case was finally settled, and they began developing these new programs and developing the new schools to try to engage or entice people outside of our district to come into the district. Well, it's probably, that's a multifaceted answer. People who were in the age group that both taught in the district at the time and were students at the time that the lawsuit was filed, and perhaps teachers that and administrators that were in the district immediately following the decision probably were okay with it, probably felt good about it, probably felt that, it was progress and it was moving forward. For people who were in the district as a student much later, like 10 years afterwards, didn't really know that there was a desegregation lawsuit going on, and did not feel that there was a need for it. And as a young person who worked on some of the task force as a young adult and working with the districts as they were developing these new schools and these new themes for some of the magnet schools, we had a different opinion about the outcome of the decision and how the money was used and the decisions that were made to implement and to entice, because the situation and the dynamics had completely shifted twofold. Whereas when the lawsuit was filed, it was probably 90% or 95% white or black, and when I was in school, it was 90% black. So I think that it could have been handled a little differently from our perspective, but like I said, so I think it's a multi-tiered. It depends upon who you ask, what role they were playing in, and the age at the time. Well, again, as a student, I graduated not even realizing that there was a desegregation suit for our district even going on. Was I aware that there had been a lot of desegregation and that there had been a policy and a problem? Of course, I was born in the late 60s, so obviously I missed all of the bulk of the desegregation and of that, and the integrating of schools, the Roe versus I was going to say Roe versus the Brown versus Board of Education. I missed so much of that. And again, the schools were 90%, the schools that I attended were 90% African American when I attended them. I would say the staff was probably 60-40, maybe, with only 40% being minority. But I did not incur any form of racism or any backlash of a desegregation during that time frame. I don't recall having any teachers that made me feel less than. The administrators in both grade school, junior high school, and high school were all black. So, let me rephrase that, the principals, because Jesse Kirksey, Mr. Rowan, and Mr. Herron were the principals. Dr. Caulfield, woman, she was white. Don't remember who Mr. Rowan's vice principal was, but so many of our leadership when I was in school were already African American, so we already had role models. So I was, I guess by the grace of God, I was, exempt from much of that.
And when you were a sub, so working as a sub, did you hear any discussions among some of your colleagues perhaps regarding school desegregation?
I would say not at working as a sub. Again, I worked on some of the task force, the deseg monitoring committees. I worked on some of that. And I would probably say that I heard inklings of that more so there than as a sub in the district. I worked at a variety of schools. I worked probably in all four corners. I think, and here's the ironic thing, what I heard, which is what I tend to agree with, was rather than try to integrate the district and bring white children into the district or Asian children who were classified as non-minority into the district, why not take the money and everything and make the district good for anyone to attend, whether they were black, white, or indifferent. And that's probably more negativity that I heard, is like the areas in which the schools are. It was all about going back to the basics of neighborhood schools, not wanting the kids to be bused. And unfortunately, that's what ended up happening, was that many of the kids were bused because you had schools further west, Bryant, Border Star, Hartman. You had several of those schools, and even Southeast, Blenheim, that were, a lot of those children were non-minority. And so the fight was to get them back into the inner city school, and people my age were going to the meetings and things and going, why are you fighting where people live? If the goal, it's kind of like an oxymoron, and it's kind of like your double-edged sword. You're fighting for kids to attend their neighborhood school, but because of the judgment, you're taking kids out of their neighborhood schools, so you're not solving the problem. You're only rehashing the same old stuff. So we need to change it. We need to figure out a way to change it. And unfortunately, I guess legally, the judgment was legally binding. They couldn't. But, and that is an issue in and of itself that we wish could have been changed, is that I wish that since it took 15, 20 years for that judgment to be made, that you could have looked at the situation in present day and made the situation. I kind of liken it to the Bible. You don't read the Bible and focus on what happened biblically, in 14 AD. No, you take that and you make it relevant for your life today. And that's what I wish could have been done with much of the things that happened in the district at the time. It really made it bad instead of better. I know you all work here, so you all may know my sister, Dr. Valerie Blackwell Tucker Blackwell, whichever name she's using today. And when you grew up in my home, you grew up grew up in a family of educators. You did not talk about the problem unless you were going to attempt to become part of the solution. And you did not talk about the politicians and not vote. You did not talk about the district and not try to make the district better. And that's the way it was. So it was an immediate when we went, I'm a product of the district. I'm now working in the district. At the time, I was waffling over whether I was going to major in education or not. So you don't just sit on the sidelines, you become effectively involved, and that's what I did. So I worked on the DSEG monitoring committee that impacted the changes that were going to be made at Southeast and the surrounding grade schools, Agnes, it was on Agnes, Pinkerton, Blenheim, and I can't remember all of them now, but the 7 or 8 grade schools and the junior high school. So I worked on that. I attended the meetings. We had them every Tuesday night, or every Tuesday night, and then we would attend the meeting prior to the meeting that was held downtown on Thursday. And similar to what I did, I had to come at it from my perspective as a recent graduate of Southeast High School, class of '83. Number one will always be. Just had to throw that in. And and now flipping the coin, a substitute in the district. What value added? What could I add? So it was, just an opportunity for me to have my voice heard and to try to impact and affect change from the inside out. Kids in junior high and high school really were not overly impacted initially when I worked at it because everything was so futuristic. At the time, the only active magnet school was Lincoln Prep. And that actually started prior to the DSEG decision, because I was actually a senior in high school when that started. So the changes for the various different magnet themes that they developed, that was all futuristic. They had to go in and make those changes, build those buildings. Some of the grade schools were more impacted, and I don't think the children or the students really had an overwhelming impact because I don't think they had a clear understanding, because no one was really, it was kind of like the elephant in the room. Everyone knew that the kids knew that something was going on, and they knew that they were riding a bus this year when they didn't ride a bus last year. But a lot of time, going back to the DSEG monitoring committee, a lot of time was being spent on educating parents, because you now have parents my age and 5 or 6 years one way or the other, variance one way or the other, and again, they were not overwhelmingly involved in segregation nor desegregation. So it was a matter of educating them of what had happened that precipitated the lawsuit, that caused the judgment to be such that it was because they basically were reacting. I mean, you get a letter in the mail, and the letter says your child went to Pinkerton Elementary, which was 2.5 blocks away from you, but because we have to make room for 25 non-minority children to be enrolled in this school, your child will now go to Blenheim, which was down the street, around the corner, and across an intersection. I don't get that part. So they began reacting. Sometimes we have a problem, and that is one of the problems that in my 50 years of growing and living in this district is that we react more so than we proact. And I don't think we effectively prepared parents for the immediate changes that we're going to take, because it literally was a decision was made in February, which was the end of one school year, to be effective August, September of the exact same year. So parents had a summer to prepare for it, and the letters went out like June or July so everybody was reacting. And so the children they just got caught up in it. They felt the energy, they felt the emotion. And here's the funny thing. One of the things I learned, again, going back to me working in the district, is that if adults will stay out of it, it's just like now, if adults stay out of it, Children can teach us a lot. Kids don't know color. Kids don't know gender. Kids don't know or gender identity. Kids don't know race. They know boy, girl, I like, I don't like. You took my ball, you took my toy, you took it. If I don't like you, it's because you took my jump rope. Or if I don't like you, but if I don't like you today, it's because you took my jump rope today. I love you tomorrow because you gave me Jell-O at lunch. Children can teach us a lot, and we did not educate our children. We attempted to educate our adults, but we attempted to educate them in a reactionary manner. So it caused more chaos than it needed to, I think. Well, being a minority in the district, that was number one. Being of the word, in the word, listening, because again, when people react, I mean, as a young sub going into the school lunchroom, which, you know, I was just old enough to smoke, so being in the teacher's room, you know, that was the door that we could never go in when I was in school. So to be able to actually walk through those doors, that was impressive and overwhelming enough for me. But to listen and sit and listen to the lunchroom, and you know, and that pouring outcry and everything, you know, I probably went in. I was at one assignment for about a month and a half, and I went in and I listened, and I went in and I listened, and I went in and I listened. Same argument every day. We have to do this. Now we have to do black, white, and indifferent. You know, everyone was dissatisfied with the changes that were necessary because of the deseg. Everyone. It was more work. It was fewer. It was more work, fewer hours. School started late. It got out earlier. Still same pay, or in some cases, no pay. They felt that because they had to go to the deseg monitoring committee meetings on Monday nights or Tuesday nights, and then they had to go downtown to the board meetings once a month, and they rotated, and they had to do this and they had to do that. There was just such an outcry, and you listen and you listen and you listen, and then one day, you know, I just started giving my opinion. Well, you know, growing up from the 70s and the 80s without having to go through what Rosa and Martin and everyone went through, and not having to be a part of TASU, which is one of the programs that was started here at UMKC by my sister and her friends. She and I both went to UMKC 20 years apart. Her perspective, my perspective, two totally different perspectives, both unique yet important. And looking at it from that standpoint, I said, you know, I truly appreciate the things that are being done to make the education for my niece, who is yet 20 years different, so that next 20 years will be different, you know, and so the grumblings weren't quite so bad. You know, giving an opinion of, well, you know, it's not about black kids and white kids going to school together anymore. It's about black kids and white kids going to the school of their choice and having the same opportunities. If Bryant has books and chalk and paper and gym and music, we want Pershing to have gym and music and pencils and papers. That is what, to me, should have been, in my opinion, a new definition of desegregation in our world. Equality doesn't mean that we have to go to school together. It means we have the choice and the free opportunity to go together should society and life circumstances present it. But if I live on the south side and you live on the north side, no matter what we have, we should all have the same. And that's what the argument should be. So if we're going to do paperwork all night, if we're going to attend the desegregation monitoring committee, if we're going to, you know, take our dinner hour to have, let's fight for that, not fight each other, because we're all on the same side. And so those were just a few of the things. And did it work? Did I have any real impact? Don't know. Still seems like we're having the same argument today. Growing up and graduating from Southeast High School in 1983 and teaching in the district in 1984 through 87, and then teaching again from 2005 to 2016, I think that the decision of the desegregation suit for our district in Kansas City, Missouri was a mistake. I think it cost money, time, effort, and energy that it did not have to cost. We did not need a magnet school that focused on law enforcement. We did not need a magnet school that focused on the Olympics. We did not need a magnet school that focused on, only one seemed to focus on education, and that was Lincoln. You know, what we needed was 8 to 10 high schools, 8 to 10 junior high schools, and 27 elementary schools that focused on, we live in an integrated society, and all of these opportunities are at your fingertips with these books, these role models, having paper and pencil, having money to be spent on buses. You know, you built a $32 million school that is probably closed now. We know Westport is closed, Westport Senior and Junior. We know Northeast, if it's not closed, is very close to being closed. And if we had just refocused our energy and took all of that time, effort, and money and spent it on everybody, which was what the lawsuit was about. The lawsuit was about everybody having inclusion and equality. And basically what they did was they took the magnets and they segregated the kids anyway. But they said it's not going to be segregation because 10 black kids will go to the Performing Arts Center at Basel, and 10 white kids will go to the Performing Arts Center at Basel. But all kids have to audition to go. Not the 50 kids that live in the 4-block radius of the school. All kids have to audition, and if the 40 kids who lived in the neighborhood didn't win the audition, then I'm sorry, isn't that a form of segregation? Just saying. It was poor. Again, when I graduated from Southeast, I graduated in a class of 325. Of that 325, maybe 100 started college. Maybe another 50 eventually went to college, but it was still the same 100 because by then 50 had either finished or dropped out. There were a lot of gangs. And there was the new games. It wasn't the Crips and the Bloods. We were pre-uniform. So it was, the tennis shoes, the Michael Jordan was in his prime. So the $200 tennis shoes, the Jordache jeans, Sassoon, all of that was new. So that was the new type. So it became a social economic gang, so to speak. My mama said that you wear Wranglers because your mama can't afford $45 jeans, that type of thing. My mother was of the opinion, no, I can afford the $45 pair of jeans, but I'm not paying $45 to wear somebody else's name. If you want me to spend $45, then you write my name on a piece of paper, and that's where you wear on your hands. And that was, so the peer pressure was that was the peer pressure. I don't have Jordache, I don't have Nike tennis shoes. I remember the most angry I became is I was probably a sophomore in high school when the very first pair of white cloth Nikes with the light, almost aqua blue swoosh. That was the very first pair of Nikes that ever came out. I mean, thinking we were probably, what, 300 designs into it now. I mean, and it was a big thing, and my mother would not buy me a pair, and I was so upset. And so it would, but we didn't, you know, I was part of, when I was in grade school, that was the term latchkey. So there are a lot of single moms, but the single moms were usually recently divorced, and so they were probably educated and or had pretty good jobs and had a pretty good handle on the household. However, as I was leaving school, the teen mom thing was big. And so the lack of education and undereducated, that's where, so when I began working in the district, that's where I began hearing the term undereducated. And so, and again, I still to this day felt if we had approached the desegregation judgment from a completely different perspective, then we may have been able to save some of the schools, some of the children, some of the parents, and some of the leadership that we ended up losing. Our children suffered, and they may have suffered at the hands from a administrator and from a having your hands locked, you know, having your hand held. They suffered at the hands of desegregation. Kids didn't know it though, because again, you're in a district that's 90% African American. You know, very few white kids. And the Boyds and the Hill Singers were two of the white families, and the Hill Singers were part of the popular kids, and Judy Boyd got her butt beat every day. You know, so she was same different races, same problems. Bullying is bullying. There was a lot of bullying. And I think that in a lot of ways, because teenage pregnancy had become on such a rise, and we were also at the onset of crack. And so because of a lot of that, I feel that those social things, because I was in school in 84, 85 when crack was bad. I was in college. And parents whose kids they may not have been born addicted to crack, but unfortunately by the time they entered into kindergarten, their parents were. And so they suffered because of it. So I think a lot of that, jobs were not bad at the time. When I came out of high school, cowboy actor, Reagan was in office. And then,
You were going with cowboy
yeah, sometimes I have to do word association. And then Daddy Bush. And and then Clinton came after him. So I had both good and bad with both. So from that, and jobs were not bad. Here's the thing. Again, if you don't see color, and sometimes I think it's a double-edged sword. If you don't make race an issue, sometimes that can be the biggest weapon that you have. If you walk into a building every day with confidence and assuredness and knowing that you belong there, knowing that you have a place there, and you don't entertain any of it. Did I ever experience racism as an adult? Of course I have. You know, the biggest thing, you know, most of it later in life. But my thing was, I have a right to be here. I don't have to entertain it. So I'm not going to entertain it. So if I walk past and someone made a smart A comment, I chose to ignore it. Well, if you walk past them every day for 3 or 4 days, and every day they take the time, effort, and energy, and I'm thinking the ulcer they are developing, and I'm still going to get my Diet Coke because I don't have an ulcer, then at some point they become your ally because they have one of two things. They can either get over it and leave you alone, or get over it and embrace you. And that's just the way I deal with it today, even. You know, there are so many things. I've held so many jobs and so many volunteer positions. I have been all over, up, down, inside, and out of Kansas City. And we do not live in a racist society. I have also lived on the East Coast, the West Coast, down. I've traveled, you know, several places. Um, yeah, I can give you some cities that are racist. Kansas City is not. Are there racist people in Kansas City? Yes. Are there opportunities where it has been better than worse? Yes. Have there been opportunities in which it was worse rather than better? Yes. But can we and have we overcome a lot? Yes. And if we can take the energy, some of the best thing one of the things that I said just the other day is that I am so in awe of our media because they did not allow our city, when that captain was killed over in KCK, to become part of the Black Lives Matter, become part of the police ambushing. They simply said he was killed in the line of duty. They did not allow for there to be any sensationalism, and they have more power than the mayor, than the police chief, anywhere, because they have apps, they have streaming, they have Channel 9, which is what I watch, has Disney at its disposal. They could have taken that opportunity to make our city something that it was not. They have not allowed the situation that Gavin Long, the problems that he created, to infiltrate our city, to put Kansas City on the map as a place of racism, as a place of hatred. And nowhere, and I watch a lot of news, and I do a lot of streaming, and I don't do a lot of Facebooking, but I do a lot of reading online. And nowhere have I read that Gavin Long drove to Dallas, Texas, and then went to Baton Rouge and ambushed police officers because of the way he was treated in Kansas City, Missouri, by black cops, by his mama, by anyone. That to me says a lot about the city that I live in. And there has been ample opportunity. You know, you know that they have interviewed enough people. They did take his brother to jail, and they've tried to make something. People have tried to make, on both sides of the coin, have tried to make something out of them taking his kids. But we do not live in a racist society. And I think that if we continue on that route, that shows that people older than me, people my age, and people younger than me have the capacity to live and embrace one another, no matter the situation, just fine. If we can be 2 million strong when the Royals win the city, we can be 2 million strong and our children persevere. We just got to continue at it, and we can't stop any moment. Anytime we have something good happen, we relish in the moment. It's just like the baseball players. We're enjoying this moment, but then tomorrow's back to business. That's what we do. When our children do well, we need to congratulate them. We need to congratulate the staff, but then we need to get to work tomorrow morning because we've got children behind them that need to have a good day too. Same thing I've been saying since I sat down. The money needs to go to first improve the city and the environment in which the kids are living in. We are a integrated city, but we are just as segregated as we can. I can take you from this building to where my niece lives, down on 4th and Kensington, and I can show you where the Somalis live. I can show you where the white people live. I can show you where it's highly Islamic. I can show you where the black folks live, because we all still live among our own people. But what we want is the opportunity. If I want to buy a house on the west side of Ward Parkway, I want to be able to do that, and I can. But in the areas where our schools are, we need to put the money in the infrastructure. We need to get rid of these abandoned buildings. You know, one of the things that I was listening to when I was listening to this young lady here is one of the biggest things that I ever learned that I liken to in a lot of life is when I was learning to type. My teacher said, focus on the accuracy and the speed will come. If you focus on trying to type 80 words a minute, but 50 of those words are misspelled, it doesn't matter. Focus on the accuracy and the speed will come. If we focus on the environment that our kids are growing up in, if we focus on letting them live in an area that's not littered, that's not abandoned, that's not run down, that is not something that you aren't proud of, why would you expect them to be proud of? Then the education will rise on its own. If I am proud, I walk to school every day from 58th in Michigan to 59th and Park, and then from 58th in Michigan to Meyer Boulevard every day. I wasn't bused. And if I can walk and be happy-go-lucky and not have to go by abandoned houses and things like that, that's the way these kids should be. But, you know, one of the problems that I had when I taught down in McCoy, which is on 17th and White, is I had one little boy that wanted me to take him home every day because he had to go through 2 different gang territories to get home. Here's the funny thing. He was a little white boy. I had 27 kids. 2 of them were white. And they were the most frightened kids in the district. And it was because, in that particular case, J.A. Rogers, which is over there off of 24 Highway, they have a horrible gang activity. And that was the junior high for that grade school. So in that environment, that particular environment is heavily Hispanic. Don't put a bunch of Johnson County white kids down there, because parents don't want to be down there. Because if parents want to be down there, they be down there. Spend the money to make sure that the gang activity is gone away. Spend the money to make sure that the rundown buildings are gone away. And then let the little Hispanic kids go to school happy-go-lucky, just like I did. And the education will come. Fix what the real problems are, and everything else will be okay. We have focused our attention, and now I'm going beyond the time frame that you've asked for, because I went back into the district in 2005, and I was in the district from 2005 to 2012. And if I hear the word map one more damn time, in the 13 years I was in the Kansas City, Missouri School District, you heard 2 standardized tests. ITBS, that we started at 4th grade. We took it 3 days. We were done. And BEST, the Basic Essential Skills Test, which started probably when I was a sophomore in high school. This MAP test got to go. And I know it is a state, it's a national test, and that there's cap for Kansas and everything. I know. But you have taken phonetics. Again, I took a long-term assignment at It was East K-8 at the time I did it. I think it's gone back to junior high school now. When I was there, and I taught 4th grade. And I was doing the Reading First program, which I personally thought was the best reading program because it encompassed so much. But one of the things that it encompassed spelling, but it did not encompass phonetic spelling. And I'm thinking there's something wrong. A, there were no spelling books. That bothered me. I had a spelling book. And every Monday morning, you turned to the first page of the new set of 20 words. You wrote them 5 times each. That was what you did before the bell rang. Then you wrote them 10 times each. Then you wrote the phonetic spelling, and then you wrote it using the word in a sentence. And they decided whether you want to underline the noun once in the prepositional phrase. I had an English book. I had dangling participles. These kids don't know, they don't have a clue. I put the schwa on the board one day because not everything is A-E-I-O-U. We all know that, and sometimes why. They kept laughing at me because I had the E upside down. They didn't have a clue. And I'm at 4th freaking grade. And every teacher, and I come, again, from a family of educators and many of their friends, it's a big sisterhood that I belong to of educators. And many of them will tell you that you learn everything that you're going to learn by the 4th grade. And then beyond the 4th grade, you're learning the exact same thing from a different perspective. Math, you learn all the math you're going to learn by the 4th grade. Algebra, trig, all of that is learning the same basic skills in a different perspective, from a different perspective. Our kids are not learning. I don't care who makes AYP. I don't care, because you cannot tell me that there is a school out there that has made AYP that you can take a child out of and give them the ITBS test and they pass it. Because all you've done is make them memorize the answers to the test. And you take them outside of that environment and put them in the real damn world, and they cannot spell a word. I worked at the Full Employment Council for 8 years. I worked with the young adults. One of the first things I had them to do was to write their own obituary. I learned that when I was in school. Because that's the easiest way to identify self-worth. Is to write what were your accomplishments? What did you do? You give them, and they couldn't spell the words. And more importantly, none of them could write. They could all have print, but they could not write. So when we have this presidential DNC and RNC in 20 years, everything is going to be 140 characters because all they know how to do is say OMG. And that's my stance on it.